Mr. Clean is here at the Pet Adoption Center. I'm here with my friend Phoenix, and Austin is doing the camera and directing, and we're gonna go check out how they save the animals and puppy dogs and kitty cats and everything. And we're also joining an animal rights group. Unless they say no, don't film, which is gonna be great, I tell you. Great for the Mr. Clean show. Come on. Yeah. We get to see puppies and stuff, and kitty cats, and I think they even have other animals like turtles and stuff. And here we go. Hi. Here we go. We get to see the critters. I'll let my director and cameraman go forth. Oh, there's a doggy right there. Hi. There's a doggy. Doggy.
Feed him up. It's for Sadie. For her tag.
Oh, they're taking the baby. They're saving an animal. Is there an animal rights group? Is there an animal rights group here? We're supposed to meet here. We're joining the animal rights group, and we're supposed to meet here to converge.
Sure. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it.
They're not even here. We're the only ones, but we're on top of things. Look, is there any critters? Oh, there's no critters. Where's the critters? Where's the critters? Oh, this one.
Yes.
Where's the pretty kitty? Sign in? Okay. Where's the pretty kitty? Oh, the fluffy blanket. Yes, yes. Oh, there's an animal. Good to see you. Hi.
Hi,
Good to see you.
I'm Austin.
And this is the doggy.
Nice to see you. The little shy.
Yeah, you too.
Huckleberry. Hey, Huckleberry.
Hi, what's your name?
Phoenix.
Oh, I like that. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's for his TV show.
Mr. Clean show. Song, dance, interviews. Of people around
So
town.
I'm just gonna have you probably sign some kind of waiver.
Okay.
I think you should be able to film, but let me just find out as far as things you should sign.
That's cool. I usually bust in and sign and just start filming and people freak out, and that makes it good for TV. Anyway, right? For the Mr. Clean show, but we're respectful of the great work that they're doing here. And here's our animal rights friends. Here's Phoenix. But I guess we should sign in.
Doug, would you please call 221? Doug, 221.
I've done a piece at the thing at the mall.
Oh, a day.
A cat? That's Buddy? Looks like he's combing Buddy. It's time for Buddy's combing.
Feels nice. Feels nice.
He's soft?
Let's get him. We see an animal. Animal.
You gotta go get him.
You can. She's a little shy. What? Can you get him?
You have to go get him. I'm taping you.
We're lucky.
Okay, we're shutting down because we have to talk to you. All right, Mr. Clean is on the scene here, heading towards the gathering for a living wage. My brothers and sisters here think that the minimum wage should be a living wage, and we see them up there. Oh, it's maybe hard to see on the cell phone footage. Thanks a lot, Lauren, but now my privileges will be restored so I can quit bad-mouthing Lauren, who had suspended my privileges just because she wasn't willing to check on a friend that was sick. Thanks a lot, Lauren. This will be the last time I have to set you straight. Now, my camera lady is here, and she wasn't even able to check out a camera because we didn't know about this in time. But now my privileges will be restored, and I can flip cameras around in the air and drop them on the ground. Yeah, Lauren, that'll teach you.
That out.
What's that?
Hopefully you'll edit that out.
No, that's the best part of this show.
Oh.
Is the rockin' thing. That's why the young people love it. No rules apply. The people are gathered. You could kind of see them there. Like if I was driving, I just want to sped through and ram through a couple of cars and knocked them all over and then got to my place on time. There they are. There they are. There. All right. They're talking. We weren't quite here in time to, but Pete is speaking. Let me set up this other cell phone camera so Betsy can film.
Here, I'm the coordinator of the Tompkins County Workers Center. What we're doing today is having a brief rally before we go into the Health and Human Services Committee meeting at 4:30. So at about 4:28, we're going to be very promptly walking in. Those who can stay, going to the Health and Human Services Committee meeting. And for those of you, it would be great if you took a yard sign with you so we all stand in unison. However, we're hoping that only myself speaks, and the reason for that is we're showing unity, but if everybody speaks, it's going to totally take over the Health and Human Services meeting. And this is actually going to be a long drive for us to do this, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to speak. That being said, it's your right to speak if you would like to do that. I want to briefly tell you a little bit about the Workers Center and why we're doing this. For those of you who don't know the history of the Workers Center, we started in 2001, and our first big campaign was working with the Ithaca paraprofessionals, which is teachers' aides, teachers' assistants in the school system, who were at that point making $6.50 an hour. After a 2-year campaign, we were able to bring them up to $9.50 with the union and us working together. We started the first living wage employer certification program in the year 2006, the first in the country. We presently certify 105 employers, and 90 of those employers are small businesses with under 50 employees or less. One of our big campaigns was with Walmart, and one of the personal things that happened to me in that campaign was a young woman who was a cashier at Walmart came up to me at our organizing table in the Commons and said that she was upset at what we were doing because she was making $7 an hour and she didn't think that she deserved any more. The problem with that is when workers feel they don't deserve it anymore, they're actually not going to stand up. And really the Workers Center is here to encourage people to stand up when they need that help. So really for me, the driving motive of this campaign is, as you can imagine, at the Workers Center, I make a living wage. Thank God. I have enough time and leisure and space in my life that I know a lot of low-wage workers just cannot afford. And I'm giving my life to changing that around. And this campaign is really about changing that around. This campaign is about every single worker in Tompkins County making a living wage, in case you didn't know, but that's where we're standing. And we're going to keep working at this until we win this campaign. Why is it unfair for workers to get paid a living wage? Because it's unfair. It's a society that's it's unjust for so many people with wealth to have poor people, working class people making a minimum wage or not much more. If you don't know, the minimum wage in New York State is $9.70 an hour right now. That's clearly not enough to live on. Economic Policy Institute says that Tompkins County, the Ithaca area MSA, is the 8th most expensive place in the country to live for a family of 4. Again, before I introduce my first speaker, I would we're going to be going in at about 4:30 into the county legislature room. We're asking people to consider not making public comment. And please take a yard sign in with you. It's my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine who also happens to sit on the city council, Ithaca City Council, and she played a crucial role in helping to get a resolution passed by the city. Cynthia Brown.
I'm really distressed to hear that we have individuals in our community who think that they don't deserve a living wage. And that really marks a turning point, which is a sad statement for our society. When we come down and think that people deserve to live in substandard conditions or get substandard wages, and that's very unfortunate. What a living wage establishes is an investment in our community. It is an investment in our people to live with dignity. When we have living wage certified employers, they are saying to us that they value their employees, they value their community, and they value the dignity of those who live here. So living wage not only talks about the income that allows you to pay for your rent, to pay for your food, to pay for your health care, to pay for, I believe, the 2-week vacation so you can take time off. It allows you to have time to think about and invest in the future, to be prepared for that time when your refrigerator breaks down, or your child gets sick, or you want to take time off of work to attend a PTA meeting or a sporting event. dignity. That is showing to your children that you have the ability to care for them and nurture them emotionally, as well as making sure that they have adequate clothing, adequate food. When our employers pay a living wage, the burden on the rest of the community to provide support is lessened. We have children who can go to school with a full belly. And I will tell you out of personal experience, there are a lot of children in our community that don't have that luxury. A lot of children in our community oftentimes don't have food between Friday lunch of school and Monday morning when they go in for breakfast. And so when we have living wage employers, we address those needs. Children who are fully fed, children who have adequate clothing, have the ability to pay attention in school. It reduces our tax burden. I'm going to talk about it from a government standpoint, right? It reduces our taxes. It reduces the strain on government to provide additional services when we have living wage employers. So it is important for all of us to look at this as a family value, a human value, a value of dignity in ourselves and our community and all the people we care for. And this is why this is important. And I want to applaud Pete for making our community the wonderful place that it is. I mean, we are literally at the forefront of so many movements that are going on around the nation. And we are the model. And the certified living wage employer system has become the model in so many communities that are being replicated. And I really want to applaud Pete and our community for making that happen.
And in terms of Pete, it's also the Worker Center overall. We have a fabulous new staff person for a year who's doing the living wage employer certification program, Rob Brown. We actually, in some ways, between you and I, there's a little bit of a challenge in some ways with some of the rural areas, so we've actually paid a little bit of attention to some getting support in the rural areas. Workers is not a problem, but actually some of the local governments in the rural areas are not a problem either. To wit, I've invited somebody from the town of Dryden that passed last year a resolution unanimously in favor of this campaign, and I'd like to introduce Town Supervisor Jason White.
Thanks, Pete, Worker Center, for bringing this issue to our attention. Many of you, and some of you might know that I represent people who can't afford lawyers, so virtually every one of my clients are all working, or they typically work 2-3 jobs just so they can pay the rent, put food on the table, and they still can't save any money to do things like take vacations or stay for their kids to even community college. So this initiative is important because it's a legislative initiative. There are many ways to go about this through the certification program so that we don't have to wait for legislators or governors to take action. People should just be doing the right thing. I think that we should be proud to be on the Worker Center for this. But I think maybe the best way to relate this, why it's really important, is to tell a quick story about, and of course I can't name the client, but I had a child, a client recently, who was separated from his parents by DSS, and one of the big reasons was she couldn't afford to have her own place. She works full-time as a shift manager at Dunkin' Donuts, and the fact that she couldn't afford her own place, even outside of Tompkins County, as being the only thing separating from her and children is just not right. So the way to do this is to make sure that people like her earn enough, and they work a full-time job just to live in a modest place, so they can have their kids there, so they can maybe even pay for daycare, so they can do more for their families. and it's simply not going to happen if people sit by and do nothing. So what I think is this, everyone here needs to really go out and keep pressing to not only fight for the minimum wage, which I know New York State's going to bring it up to $15, but by the time it gets there, it's not going to be enough. So we really need to keep pushing towards living wage. It's going to really do right by families all across the state, all across the country. So I'd like to thank Pete and Cynthia for all their work, the Worker Center, and everybody else get on board and make it happen. Thank you.
Our next speaker actually hails from Jason's district. Jason is this gentleman's town supervisor, and he has Martha Robertson as the county legislature. We've actually become friends over the last couple of years since we met through the campaign. I'd like to introduce Michael Blodgett from the town of Dryden.
My name is Michael Blodgett. I've lived in this area most of my life. Born in Syracuse, Ithaca, Lansing, but I've been in Dryden. I've been out of the state 3 different times. Currently, I was working through a school district, and they let me go in February. And my wife works full-time. She's employed at the Cornell, and she's a full-time seasonal worker. She probably figured out work about 9 months out of the year. When she isn't working, she doesn't get paid. Because she stays all her vacation time, and she's off for 5 weeks at Christmas time. To help support them. I currently live off Hanshaw Road, View Mobile Home Park. I've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath trailer that is ran to the hill. I've got me and my wife, and my daughter, my son-in-law, and my granddaughter all living in this cramped trailer. We can't afford to go out and try to buy anything because there's no money to be had. Loans and whatnot, they're not making it possible for us. I am, said my wife makes good money, but this is the way it is. We're trying to buy a place, but we're not able to, like I say, get a loan. Because we had issues back. I've been out of state 3 different times, and whatever reason, our credit went down to 2, and we're still trying to slowly get above water. And we just trying to find a place to live that we'd be happy. And I'm trying to get a job again, but one of my main points is I live in Florida about 10 years. I made good money where I worked. I worked for a big church down there, maintenance and custodial. I've been back in this state since '09, and I still have not made what I made at that church in Florida, up here. And I think that's pretty sad. I just don't know. You know, every place you go, and right now, being out of work, I'm getting the idea that all these jobs I've applied for with years of experience, they're telling me, 1, I'm overqualified, or 2, I'm too old. I'm not much time left to work. So, I don't know how many jobs I've applied for since I've been out of work, but probably 15, 20. And I'm waiting for one to hear back here this coming week again. And that's about all I have to say, people.
Thank you. So just a point of reference, Michael told me a couple months ago that his combined family income with 5 people is $48,000 a year. And, you know, obviously, that's not a lot of income for 5 people in a situation. No. And basically worked in a custodial job making $11 an hour after 5 years. So, you know, how can people live on this amount of money? I just want to, before I go into our next speaker, a government official regrets that she couldn't be here. This is the newest Town of Enfield official. Last week, the Town of Enfield passed a resolution in favor of this campaign. This is Town of Enfield board member Becky Sims, and she wanted me to relate to you all that we as a community can no longer accept wages that leave hardworking people unable to support themselves or their families. Anyone who works full-time should not have to rely on external subsidies to meet their basic needs. Enfield residents in particular are affected by sub-living wages, highlighted by the fact that 73% of the students at Enfield Elementary qualify for free or reduced lunch, the highest of any school in Tompkins County. Enfield is on board with the campaign.
All right.
My pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who, for those of you who may remember, we did a living wage visioning to be in Jim Dennis's district, and she works at a local pharmacy, not making a living wage. It's my pleasure to introduce Leslie Prutti.
So, we're here today because we want a living wage. With all the fuss about this, you think we're asking for the moon itself. But the reality is we're not asking for a lot. And it's rather disheartening that we have to ask for something so basic. The truth is, we're long overdue for a wage that merely meets our basic needs. We're not asking to get rich, we just want to pay our bills. We don't need a luxury car, we just want to have a car. We aren't expecting a 7-course meal, we just want enough good food. We don't want to live in fear anymore of the inevitable day we get too sick or get an expense too crushing and we meet our ruin. We want to save a little for emergencies, and occasionally we want to have a little fun. We want to be fairly compensated for the work that we do. This will show that we are valued by the society we live in. It would be nice to thrive, but first, we need to survive. We're not hoping for a lot. These are basic things everyone should have. You see, we don't really want the moon. We just want to live a little. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you'd like to see Leslie's entry as well as everybody who entered the Living Wage Visioning Contest, you can go to our website, tcworkercenter.org, click on Living Wage Campaign, and then hit the menu item, Living Wage Visioning Contest, and you'll see Leslie's entry and everybody else's entry. Thanks, Leslie. Our next speaker has kind of changed my life and rocked my world. He came to us 4 years ago, 5 years ago. He works in the recycling facility along with a guy named Stanley McPherson. And this next speaker was instrumental in our campaign to win an increased amount of contracted workers a living wage, including workers at the recycling facility in Ithaca County. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Milton Webb.
Okay. Hi.
Hello everybody, I'm Milton. When I first started doing this, it was hard. It was really hard. And Stanley and I were contemplating if we're going to continue to do this. Well, this is Paul. She died a year ago. That was my woman. And I still get choked up when I talk about it. She told us, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Everybody needs to make money the way they can live. Whether you're just starting out, whether you've been working, whether you're working in a spot and you don't make a living wage, somebody has to make the noise. Stanley and I make the noise. All right? When you don't make enough money the way you can live, there are other things that you think about doing. There are other things you're contemplating on doing. They're not always the right thing to do. There's a lot of people out here in these streets just working a 40-hour-a-week job. They can't pay their rent. They can't pay their bills. What do you want them to do? When they mess around and turn the other way, people want to lock them up. I don't fault nobody for the way they think they got to make their money or how they got to live. Not necessarily saying that it's a good thing to do or the right thing to do. But when you don't make a living wage and you got a family, what do? Because when your daughter or your son tells you, Mommy, I'm hungry, but you ain't got enough money to go buy them nothing to eat. Mommy, Daddy, I'm hungry, but you can't take them to McDonald's to give them a Happy Meal. Ramen noodles and all of that gets old, even to a kid. If you don't have enough money to live, and you don't have enough money to pay your bills, like I said, you look in other directions. And it doesn't make a difference on how honorable you are. Because you sit up there and you got to think about your family. And when you can't provide for your family, you look and to do other things. If you can't make a living wage where you're working, you can't make enough money to live where you're working, How is it that you think you're going to make around and make ends meet? There are other things that you can do. Yes, this is true. But the consequences are great. So therefore, you need to make a living wage. You got guys out here that are CEOs that are getting these bonuses that are $250,000, that are getting money out here to where, like, if she went out to make money, she couldn't do it. If he went out to make money, he couldn't do it. If he was looking for a job, he couldn't get it. So what do you do when you can't make a living wage? You have to do the best you can, and whatever it is that you can. And this is what a lot of people do. This is why we need a living wage, because a lot of families are living in their cars. A lot of families don't have no place to be. They're living in other people's house, couch surfing, whatever you want to call it. A living wage is a necessity here in Tompkins County. And I don't care how...
I will chit-chat a little bit. I'm just trying to see it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to get the meeting started. First, before we do anything else, are there any changes to the agenda from the committee or departments? Great. I have one blue card right now. We do have some guidelines for speakers. If anybody else does want to come up and speak, please do fill out a blue card. The only things that we ask is that you state what municipality you're from, if you are willing, and what topic you're going to talk about, and that we don't talk about the performance of individual personnel. That you can bring to me personally or to HR. And I just wanted to take an opportunity because two things. One, I see that most people are here to talk about the living wage or to support the living wage. I had a great meeting with Pete and the members of the Workers' Center earlier today. And one of the things that I wanted to say to all of us is that this is a long haul. This isn't something that happens overnight, and what it requires is that we all stay really engaged, which means that this goes hand in hand with supporting local, buying local, engaging with the local community, making sure that we support our local businesses so that they can support us. So I think the less we polarize and the more we work together and we figure out what all of the challenges are and then make sure that we help each other, I think we can get there. So let's just stay engaged and make this happen. So thank you so much for coming. And the other thing that I want to say is, as some of you may have read in announcements that I've put out, housing, as you all know, which is a big part and parcel with the issue of not having sufficient wage, is a crisis right now in our county. And so I have asked all of the departments to present on the support services that they provide with respect to housing. Each month, a new department and agency will present and give information about the support. And the intention is the more we understand what our government provides, the services and support that our government provides, when we know someone who needs, we'll know, everyone will know where to send them. We'll all be engaged. It's about knowing what your government is and what your government provides so that we can be engaged. So I would ask that anyone who can, after the public comment, to stay. The presentation is right after it, intentionally, so that I would ask if you can to stay and hear what the Human Services Coalition, the services with respect to affordable housing, has to offer. So thank you all for coming. And I am going to open it up for public comment. I have a blue card from Pete Myers, who I just saw running around. There you are. Mm-hmm. Hey. Officially accepted.
My name is Pete Myers. I live in the city of Ithaca in Carroll Chalks District. What I just gave to Anna, she's going to get to everybody.
I will proudly claim you, Pete.
Yeah, we're proud to have you as our legislator. The petitions that have thus far been signed, close to 3,000 signatures on petitions in support of everybody being paid a living wage in Tompkins County. Just for those of you who don't know much about the Workers' Center, about this campaign, I'm not going to presume that everybody does, is that we started in 2003, paraprofessionals campaign. Paraprofessionals are making way below a living wage. We worked with the union and got them a living wage within 2 years. It actually took a long time to get that living wage. We started a Walmart living wage campaign a couple years later when Walmart moved in 2005. And my big story, I know I'm speaking to some people who heard the rally already, but kind of a formative experience, even though at that time I was 43 or 44 years old, was a young woman coming up to the table, our organizing table in the Commons, and saying to me, I work at Walmart, and I don't deserve any more than the $7 an hour I'm being paid. To me, that was, it just really convicted me in the heart of, like, we're not really going to change things around until we can really get workers to see, for us to collectively see what we're worth. And it's not like we're worth only dollars and money and cash and stuff, but I mean, does your employer have respect for you if they're not paying you, a decent wage? I really have to question that, and I think we have a society that's based on a lot of low-wage work, and that needs to be changed around. Suffice to say, you can imagine why we're here today. We're here basically to propose to this committee, Health and Human Services. This is our first entrance into the county legislature. I don't imagine, as Anna Kellis said, this is going to be a one and done, and then next week we're going to have a countywide living wage for every single worker. I know I'm not stupid. It's not going to happen that quickly. But we want it to happen quickly, and it's like, but I think there is amount of patience, but there's an amount of pushing that needs to happen at the same time. It's going to be kind of a dialectic between the two. I think there are a lot of people that are living on poverty wages right now, and that's unacceptable. If you look at, also to consider that the Ithaca area MSA is actually very expensive to live in. It's actually the highest upstate. And it's actually the 8th most expensive place in the country for a family of 4, according to the Economic Policy Institute. Really the call here, and everybody's here because we would like to see this issue advance on the agenda as we go forward. We do understand there's interlocking issues as well with housing, and I'm glad that this is happening today. And I really want to thank everybody who came out today on behalf of this campaign, because it helps me to know that this campaign is bigger than just the Worker Center. There's a lot of people who I've not seen here before, and not seen in my life. So, we're going to up the ante, the Worker Center, and a lot of like-minded organizations I know in the community, and I thank you all for being here. Thanks.
So I want to call Stanley McPherson from Tompkins County. Stanley, my dear.
Anna?
It's all you.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here based on a living wage. We had this movement for 3 years already. That's what prompted my TV show, What Matters at the Round Table, because my employees fired me. That prompted me to start a living wage because we asked for more money, and they didn't want to give it to us because we couldn't live off what they was giving us. We was working hard, and we wasn't getting what we need. And so we here to fight now continuously for a living wage for everybody. Every person that work at a job, every company, we are fighting for a living wage for them. It takes more than $14 to $15 to feed one person, okay? It takes more than that to pay your rent. It takes more than that to pay your phone bill, to pay your electricity, okay? So we know what it takes. We're not trying to hear what other people say what it takes to feed, to make it. We're not trying to hear that, because we know if they wanted to switch checks and pay stubs, my friend here at Milton Webb asked to give them his check, and he'll take theirs, but they did not want it. So apparently we know that it takes more than $14 or $15 to make it, because they didn't want to switch. Okay? So we know what it takes. All right? And all we asking them to do is come off the money. Come off the money, because we know you got it. And we're here to tell the legislator, you using money for other things. We're asking you to put it in contingency for living wage. We know you can do it. You did it once before, but you did not keep it up. It needs to be kept up here, okay? Money is going for all other things. We see it. We read the minutes. We know what money is going for. And some of the things is outrageous that it's going for. Prisons, more beds. Instead of releasing people, you open it up, more prisons. No. Help families. Help children to make it. Okay? This is what we need. Not going to prison, coming out, taking care of your family here in Tompkins County and abroad. We need to do it. We're going to start right here. We're starting from right here and now. We don't know what other people's doing. We don't know what Syracuse is doing. We don't know what the Bronx is doing or Albany is doing or the commissioner or the governor. But we do know one thing, what we are doing. We are fighting for a living wage, and we're fighting now. And we're going to get it. And we're not going to stop until we get a living wage for every person that needs it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I want to call Milton Webb.
So, Anna, before their few minutes starts, would it make sense while this is going on and before people file out to see if anybody wants to circulate a sheet with email addresses so that if this should be on the agenda in the future, that we could send out an announcement to those who clearly have an interest?
If Pete wants to do that at some point, I'll leave that up to you. You have people's emails. Thank you, Pete. Come on up, Milton.
Hello again, everyone. As my partner, Rance Stanley, says, everybody needs to make a living wage. You can't live without it. You can't do anything without it. You can't pay bills. You can't pay high rent that they got here. You can't live without a living wage. If it's not here, if we don't start here, where are we going to start at? We have to start here in Tompkins County. This is where we kicked it off at. This is where we're going to do it at. This is how it's going to happen, right here in Tompkins County. Now, when people lay their children down at night and their children are hungry, what do you tell them? Oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. We can do it all. There's a lot of selfish people running around here, all right? And you need to get up off that money. You need to let these people make a living wage. You need to give it to them so that they can live, so that they can take their families on vacation, so that they can do stuff for their children. A kid grows up in poverty. The first thing he says is, when you take him to school, what do you want to be when you get older? Some might say, I want to be a police officer. One might say, I might want to be a fireman. Somebody might say, I want to sit on the legislative board. But you always got that one that says, I want to be a drug dealer because they make money every day. They make money all the time. That's not acceptable. I don't care how anybody think they have to live or whatever they think they got to do. But for a child to say that, that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. I don't see it like that. I don't see how people can mess around here and say, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to give you $14 an hour. But you need $20 an hour to live. I can't see that. I can't see for me to tell you, all right, I'm going to make this $16 an hour go out, but you say, no, you can't do that because you need $20 an hour to live. You're on the right track, but everybody else ain't. So what do we do behind that? We fight, we fight, we fight, and we always fight for a living wage. Thank you.
I have one last speaker, Deborah Dawson from Lansing.
Is this one up?
I think so.
I just want to approach this from a slightly different angle. And it is not that I don't have a great deal of sympathy, empathy, concern for people who don't have enough to put a roof over their head and food on their kids' tables. But this is a bigger issue for the entire county. My concern has always been that we're going to be caught up with limited resources, especially with this administration in Washington and with our dear governor in Albany. Our county needs to be able to support its initiatives itself. The best way to do that is to increase our revenue base. Sales tax is a big piece of our revenue base. And if people don't have money to spend on the necessities of life, they don't pay sales tax on much of anything. There are numerous studies that show that increasing the income of people towards the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder results in a much greater circulation of money through the economy, and that circulation creates sales tax revenue. So even if you're someone who, for some reason, doesn't give a damn about what the previous speakers have addressed so eloquently, consider that this minimum wage is going to be very beneficial for our county's revenue base on the whole. Thank you.
So one thing that I wanted to add, and again, this presentation is going to be about 20 minutes and then Q&A, so I urge everyone to stay since I've put it first to follow public comment for everyone. One of the pieces that we hear a lot is how challenging it is for businesses to provide a living wage. So one of the things that we could do is for everyone here in the room that knows a business that is providing a living wage, if you could urge them to write a letter to the legislature talking about how they did it, how what are the opportunities that it gives them, what are the challenges that they overcame. That would be an incredible service, so we can start that conversation. So if you know someone or you are someone, write us a letter. Let us know what your experience is. So I am going to hand the floor over to the Director of the Human Services Coalition, Kathy Schlother, to begin this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for having this opportunity to do this. Talking about, because the legislature made housing their focus this year. Clearly, housing is, when you look at the issues that are important to Tompkins County, it's on everybody's list. And I appreciate being able to give this presentation in front of people who are so clearly committed to meeting the needs of the residents of Tompkins County. One of the things, I'm actually not going to do the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our Continuum of Care Coordinator, Tierra Labrada. But before we did that, I just want to just spend a minute talking about what we do. So the Human Service Coalition is what's called the lead agency for the Continuum of Care, which is a group of service providers who work to end homelessness in Tompkins County. But where we help coordinate, and Tierra does a fabulous job running numerous committees and coordinating a lot of agencies. I just wanted to give, and I appreciate the fact that we get to talk, I really wanted to give a heads up to the agencies that actually provide these services in our community and how much they work. Lee and Danielle are here from TC Action, Lakeview Mental Health, Rescue Mission, Learning Web, Catholic Charities, all the work DSS does, Second Wind Cottages, and I want to thank all the people who are on these committees who work so hard, like everybody sitting here does, and the Planning Department, OAR, and people. I mean, you couldn't do this if people didn't come together and be willing to work hard on this. So I also want to thank, I don't think he's here, Nels Bone. So the COC requires that you have a private agency and a government agency, and the other chair of this committee is Nels Bone, who's the director of the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency. So I just wanted to get that out before I turned over the presentation to Tierra.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. You kind of stole my spiel there, but I'll do my best. I'm Tiara Labrada. I'm the Continuum of Care Coordinator over at the Human Services Coalition. I just wanted to start out, Kathy did a little brief synopsis about the COC, but what the COC actually is and why the Human Services Coalition is the lead agency for that. The COC is a federal initiative instituted by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and HUD essentially says that all communities who are receiving services or who are receiving funds to provide services to people experiencing homelessness has to collaborate. The service providers have to collaborate across agencies, and the continuum of care is the kind of conduit by which agencies receive funding by putting in one consolidated grant application. And the Human Services is the lead agency that does that. It's a competitive grant application that we put in each year. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the presentation. So like Kathy said, there are several different service providers that we partner with, about 25 active agencies within the continuum of care itself. She listed some of them, but these are kind of all of the agencies that we work with. Some of them are housing providers, and Anna, you said earlier, we'll be talking about affordable housing, which is not what the COC does. The COC provides services to people experiencing homelessness. So what we do at the Human Services Coalition is coordinate the efforts of service providers who are providing homeless services, housing and homeless services.
Across all the departments we hit.
Yeah. But as you see, all of these agencies that are listed up here are not homeless or housing service providers. We have Family and Children Services, Alcohol and Drug Council, the Police Department, Office of Human Rights, churches, DSS, Soldier On, the VA Affairs, Law New York. Our reach really spans across the service sector, and we're really excited about that. We have 6 working committees listed here. I'm not going to go through what all of our committees within the COC does, but I did want to touch on the Coordinated Assessment Committee because that is really integral to how people are accessing homeless services within the community right now. The Coordinated Assessment System is also a HUD initiative. Because we receive grant funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we are required to obviously follow their mandates, and one of them is that housing providers or homeless service providers have to identify, engage, assess, and assist people in a coordinated way. And it's essentially reshaped the way that people who are experiencing homelessness are accessing services. HUD says that we have to prioritize the most vulnerable people within the community, that we have to standardize the way that we are assessing those clients and determining their vulnerability, and that we have to eliminate essentially the need for individual program or project wait list. And so what the Coordinated Assessment System does is we've developed a vulnerability index and an order of priority within this community that prioritizes the most vulnerable population. And for instance, one of the vulnerabilities would be someone with the longest history of homelessness and a severe mental health issue, or someone with the longest history of homelessness who has a family or a physical disability or something like that. So we have this order of priority, and that's how we are assessing clients. I'll give you an example of how the Coordinated Assessment System works, which I think would be beneficial to the people who are here also. For instance, if a person is returning home from jail or prison and goes to OAR and says, I need to—
OAR being?
Opportunities, access and resources?
Alternatives.
Okay, opportunities. I don't know what that. Sorry. I call them OAR. Someone goes to OAR or the Advocacy Center or Catholic Charities or one of the other agencies that are within the continuum of care who is actively part of the Coordinated Assessment System and says, hey, I'm homeless, I need some help, I need some housing. What that agency will do is take out our vulnerability index, our standardized assessment tool, ask that client a few questions, and then based on their vulnerability and also the answers to those questions, they would determine what programs or housing programs that client would be eligible for. So it eliminates the need for clients to go to different agencies, to go to OAR or Catholic Charities or Tompkins Community Action seeking services or housing. So that client would then be assessed by that one agency and then would be put on a community-wide wait list that all of our service providers or housing providers are accessing when they have beds to fill. So that eliminates the need for clients to go around and rehash their story, rehash their trauma, and it consolidates, it actually coordinates the referral process a lot better and makes the system work really efficiently and effectively. We just launched that in January of 2017, and we did a presentation at the Homeless and Housing Task Force a couple of weeks ago, but yeah. Go ahead. Yes, so we'll get into that a little bit later. We'll get into a little bit of numbers a little bit later on, which is why I wanted to give the synopsis of the coordinated assessment system to you all. And Danielle, who's here, is our coordinated assessment team chair, and she knows how hard we've worked on this, developing this system. And we're in our 6 months, and we'll get into some numbers a little bit later on about how many people are being referred. What this also does quickly is help us to determine who's being able to access housing services and what the gaps are within our within our service spectrum. Because if we have people who are on the list who aren't able to receive housing because they are being pushed down because they're less vulnerable, or for other reasons they're not being referred to projects that we have available, it would help us determine what kind of projects we need to fund later on. So with that, I would like to really stress to this committee and to the general public that the continuum of care and all of the projects that we fund are very constrained by HUD's homeless definition. We are not allowed to stray outside of these 4 categories here. So we have HUD defines these categories. As far as I know, there's no public input about how they are defining these categories, and we are unable to provide services in permanent supportive housing or transitional housing or rapid rehousing projects that receive HUD funding if clients are not in one of these categories, and then also one other category that I'll talk about in a minute. So our category 1, and these categories are a lot more expansive, obviously, but I've consolidated them to the kind of the meat and bones of it, or meat and potatoes, I guess, of the categories. So if you're literally homeless, you're living in a place not meant for habitation and or exiting a shelter or facility where you resided for more than 90 days. And that can be a safe haven, a hotel or motel that's being provided to you by county or public funds. That can be any other jail or institution, rehab facility, etc. I believe there's one caveat to that, is that you have to have been homeless prior to your entry into that system. And so if you come out of jail and you weren't homeless the day before you went in there, you have to spend 1 night in a shelter or on the streets or living in a place not meant for human habitation in order to be able to access some of the services. That's not a local requirement. That is a federal HUD mandate that we have to abide by. But we do have the category of imminent risk of homelessness, which means an eviction in 14 days or less with no subsequent housing and little or no income to be able to support your move, your transition into other stable housing. Our category 3 is provided as unaccompanied youth or a family with children. This gets a little convoluted, but if you hadn't signed a lease within 60 days of seeking homeless services, or if you've moved 2 times in the last 60 days, or if you face barriers to employment, which could be substance abuse, mental health issues, criminal history, all types of barriers that people typically face, credit reports, all types of stuff, or little or no income. And then category 4, which kind of can roll into all of these other categories, but if it's a person who's attempting, a person or family who's fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. So they run the spectrum, but it's also a constraint for us.
Are there people who've come to you that don't fit those categories?
Absolutely. One of the things that we get often, and so there's two, so HUD says, you have people who are over 25 are considered adults, and then you have the 16 to 24 or under 24 category, which is considered youth. So youth, adults have to be homeless in order to receive services, which means if you had stayed at your friend's on your friend's couch or on your friend's floor the night before, and then you're trying to access homeless services, you will not be able to access those services because you stayed somewhere the night before. So that's a constraint. But for youth are allowed that kind of couch surfing, that instability in order to access those services. So what we get a lot of the time are people being released from jail and having to go into the shelter to even be able to access services long-term, so to get into any kind of permanent supportive housing projects that we have.
So the shelter does count as homeless?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah,
and I just want to throw in, these are HUD-supported services. It's not like service providers don't help other people. They help lots of other people.
But it's just the HUD money.
Housing.
It's so HUD, the federal government only supports these, But,
right. Well, they say that you have to, if you receive funding through HUD, through the COC, and we'll talk about the funding streams a little bit later, if you receive funding through these streams, then you have to abide by these particular categories of homelessness, which, again, really constrains our service providers here. And we'll talk a little bit about what the $50,000 that we'll be getting is going to help us do, because then we won't be as constrained by these definitions. We'd be able to open that up a little bit more. So we have those 4 categories of what we'll call literally homeless, category 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the chronically homeless is what is actually HUD's priority. So all of our COC-funded programs have to dedicate their beds to the chronically homeless population. And when I say dedicate, it just means that we are required to house chronically homeless people first. And so again, the chronically homeless definition is defined by HUD, and it changes yearly or biannually or whenever they feel like changing the definition of what constitutes a chronically homeless person. But for now, someone who's chronically homeless must have a disabling condition, or someone in the household, it doesn't have to be an individual person, but someone within the household must have a disabling condition, whether that be a physical condition that prevents them from working, a mental health issue, or a substance abuse issue that's preventing them from being able to work. They have to be continuously homeless, and when I say homeless, I mean living in a place not meant for human habitation or in a shelter or safe haven for at least 12 months.
Oh, wow, that rocks! Okay, now Mr. Clean is here on scene. All right, and give me coffee.
We're also not happy.
Excuse me.
That's correct. Okay. It did face a threat for actually not having
Pretty good stuff. Sorry, I was so brief there on some of the things with the packed house. I didn't want to stay. Oh, here we go.